All right.
Let's go.
Welcome to the True Talk podcast. I'm your host, Tizzy Tuck, t-rizzle. I don't know, 2T, TS.
Tuck.
I'm on my TS, my Tuck stuff, True stuff, True Talk. I don't know. Anyways,
Hi, guys.
we got to cut that. We'll have to do that again. Or not. I don't know. Welcome to the True Talk podcast.
What's up,
with
friends?
Savannah Grace. I am not your host.
I am.
I'm your hostess with the mostest.
Host with the most.
Dude, we got to reset this. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm off like 3 cups of coffee. All right. Here we go. Reset.
Restart.
Okay. Welcome to the True Talk podcast.
Hi. I'm so far.
Did you say you farted?
I'm so far. Do you want me to do the intro?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Ready? Take what for? All right.
It's a take.
3. Actually, I don't have to do the 3, 2, 1 because the audio is already synced. Right. Hi, friends. What is up? That was so incredibly loud.
What's up, friends? What's up, pals?
friends? Politos.
Buds.
Buddies. Bros, as Jonathan calls it. What is up, you guys? It's your girl, Savannah Grace here. And, guys, we're actually filming a True Talk podcast episode.
It's been a minute.
It's been a hot minute.
Also, if you ever see the bloopers that leak out of this,
Don't.
you will know it has been a minute. It's taken us a while to get this far.
It has.
It's actually taken us a while to even get a podcast going.
What? It's been weeks.
Yeah, we've probably talked about this since what?
Actually, we've talked about it for months, but I haven't been like serious about starting the podcast back, so I don't think it was ever pushed. But the last few weeks we've been serious about it. So
More serious than normal.
I figured why not relaunch it with talking with one of my favorite people,
Your favorite person.
t-rizzle Tuck.
Actually, you have a favorite person now.
I do.
I don't think they know that, do they? I don't think they. He might stop by the studio, right?
No, he's got to go mow the grass.
Oh, that's not as fun.
Responsibility.
Yeah, that's not. Adulting's awful. It's trash.
But I do have a new favorite person.
Yeah. You want to tell us about him? This is how we're just going to get started.
This is how we're going to get started. I do. So I have a boyfriend, guys. Woo!
Wow.
If you've been around the podcast for any time span, or if you've been in my life for any time span at all, you know I have never
You're
been...
like all giggles right now. This is the honeymoon phase, by the way, in case anybody out there is wondering.
I have never been in a relationship before, so...
You had like one little 2-week stint, if we count that.
No, I don't count that.
He showed up. I like that kid. He was a good kid.
He was a good kid. He was. It was never anything. I mean, it was never. I don't even think we ever held hands even.
I don't think y'all did either.
And I deep down, this sounds so bad. I hope he doesn't listen.
Love him.
He's a good guy. I just said yes out of pressure because my friend at the time was pushing me to that, and I was like, sure.
He wasn't a bad looking dude.
No,
Was y'all's first date when you brought him to Abby's birthday party? We went to Mellow Mushroom. We were all eating.
No, I
got
was there by
wings.
myself.
Oh,
He didn't come.
He was there, I promise. That's the first time I met him. That's the only time I met him, actually.
Why are we talking about that? That wasn't even...
Well, because you said I've never been in a relationship
Because
before.
I don't consider that a relationship. That was like a situationship.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't either, but a relationship has a lot more, I feel like, serious, meaning behind it. And like I said, all creds to this guy, but it was anything
Great
serious.
dude.
He was a good guy, loved the Lord, all the things, but I just said yes out of peer pressure. That sounds so bad. I just literally said yes out of peer pressure, and then I was like, but no, I don't consider that my first relationship or boyfriend.
That was an awkward dinner, looking back on it.
It was an awkward 2 weeks.
It was an interesting.
I hope he feels the same way. I hope he doesn't listen to this.
Dude,
He shouldn't be talking about it.
Here's the deal. I feel like every relationship has those awkward moments, though. You know what I'm saying? Especially those.
Don't even ask Jonathan. I've had so many awkward moments.
I told Abby. So for those of you who don't know, I'm married to her sister. I told Abby within the first 2 weeks of us really even ever speaking to each other that I loved her. It was on. It was on Super Bowl night, and she came to pick me up, and we were gonna go TP somebody's car, and she picked me up. Actually, I don't even know if we did that. I think we saran wrapped their car.
Oh my gosh.
And so she came to pick me up, and I think I missed the halftime show. I might have missed the third quarter too. She picked me up, like kidnapped me from my house, really. Like I didn't have a choice. She threw me in the car.
Sounds like Abigail.
We love you. So we went out, did the TPing, and I was on like security watch because I didn't want to be involved in that. I'm too good of a person.
Oh, yes. Too good tuck.
Yeah, Too Good Tuck. True Talk podcast, Too Good Tuck. Anyways, so I stayed guard, and which we got caught, by the way. His sister actually, like, his car was at her house, and the sister came out, and we had to explain what we were doing, and she's like, "Oh, you're good."
Oh.
Yeah. So anyways, so that happened, and then she drove me back to her house, and I just kind of like, I was getting out of the car, kissed her goodnight, walked out the car. I said, "Goodnight, love you." Walked out the car, shut the door. Yeah. And I literally like, I don't want to.
Did you guys keep saying it though after that point to each other?
No. So I walked out the car, I shut the door, and I was like facing that direction. The car was this direction, and I like kind of thought about it for a second, and I was like, I gotta clarify. So I opened the door back, I sat in the seat, and I like sat down, and I was like, "Hey, so we need to talk about what just happened." And she was like, "Okay." And we weren't even dating at this point. Like we were literally like we had just started.
Why is this mine and Jonathan's exact story? I'll have to tell you that.
Yeah, well, you don't have to tell all the people that. But so we had just started dating, and so I said we weren't dating at this point. We just started talking 2 weeks before, and so I sat down and I was like, I have a really bad habit of telling everybody I love them, which isn't a lie. That is true.
No, that is very true.
But I also don't know if that like helped my case, because now like she's like, oh, he just goes around saying I love you, dropping the L word, which I do. And so,
hey, as I'll say, there's a difference between outer court and inner court love.
I don't know what that means at all.
You know, like in the temple, like outer court, inner court, holy of holies. Certain people were allowed in the outer court.
Yeah, that was voided with Jesus. Good try though. Jesus.
It's a joke.
Anyway,
I'll explain it later.
I was in a car. I don't know if that counts. Inner car. Inner car love.
Of your heart.
Inner car love. Anyways, so I stepped out, and I stepped back in the car, and I was like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I said that to everybody." We kind of laughed it off. It wasn't that big of a deal. And then I don't remember when we started dating. It was probably, we didn't start dating until like a month after that, because that was like early February. We started dating March 10th. So I don't know what that. Which, by the way, we had Charlie March 15th. So yeah, the more you know. Anyways, I've had a kid since we shot a podcast.
Yes, the last time we shot a podcast, Tucker didn't have a kid. Now he's got one, and he's got another on the way. Little Charlie.
I had a dog.
Huh?
I had a dog.
You didn't have a dog?
I don't think I had goats when we shot a podcast either. I'm a farmer now.
He's all the things. But no, that's funny though, because so mine and Jonathan's story is similar. So it was, you know, because the first time was whenever I went, the first time and like, I guess like talked and
When did y'all meet?
We met at a fall retreat.
Oh, did y'all?
So in November, Hey,
if you've never been to a fall retreat, magic things happen there.
Yes, it does. Mount Olive Students Fall Retreat 2024.
We might actually I would spoil the theme.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Okay,
don't do
never
that.
mind.
But anyways, so Fall Retreat was where we met. I thought he was a student, and I'm not okay. I didn't when I've told him this, he knows. I did not expect to talk about him this whole podcast, so here we are. But
we're like 10 minutes in.
I though thought he was a student because I didn't know anybody. I was going on fall retreat to help out Abby with Charlie and help you out with whatever. I was just there to be extra hands. I hadn't started going to the church yet. I didn't. You
were there to be a blessing.
Yes.
And you were. Anyways.
Yes. And so I didn't know anybody. Well, I was a judge for some of the games, and so he kept coming up making comments about his team winning and stuff like that. And I was like, this kid is wanting to get points. Well, my mom and Abby had noticed it, and they're like, girl, he is flirting with you hard. Like, he's flirting. And I was like,
was he? Did he admit to this?
I think so. I think he said, like, I think he was.
I think we gotta. We gotta have him on an episode.
We can just call him right now. Hey.
I mean, that's a take. I think we gotta have him on his own episode.
Oh gosh, that would
I want to
be
mediate this though, right? Like, I want to be there just to like stir up conversation. Anyways,
so we met for a retreat. Didn't think anything of it. A few weeks go by. He comes up on a Sunday, asks me for my number to invite me to Bible study because he has Bible study. His family hosts a Bible study on Tuesday nights.
All my male friends. That's how you shoot your shot. Invite them to Bible study.
And he did.
I don't think I can say this. Study the Song of Solomon. We're not doing that. Don't do that. I was looking at
different season of life.
I was looking at the book of Numbers and realized I didn't have yours.
Yeah. There you go. He could have said that. But no, he did. He come up and asked for my number. Well, then long story short, we ended up going to Bible study. Talked, and you know me, I don't like small talk because it's like, I'm like, ugh. And so the whole night though, we had conversation and it flowed really well. Like, really well. He might have a different perspective. I think he thinks it flowed well he was making jokes about things that I didn't understand and I felt really stupid now looking back because I'm like, that whole time I was just like, thought he was being serious about stuff. But anyways.
You were also really sheltered, like growing up.
Very, 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 very sheltered. Yeah. Very. And
you and Abby are like polar opposites.
Yes, we are. Which is so funny because we come from the same household, but we just different. But anyways.
Love my wife.
We love her. And, but, so we're talking we were there talking until at his house. And it wasn't just us two. There was a bunch of people there. Talking till like 11.
About Bible stuff?
Huh?
About Bible stuff?
Well, this was after the Bible study. Everyone was just hanging out. So we were just talking about
so y'all weren't actually studying the Bible?
No, we were beforehand. And then afterwards, Bible study ended about 8:30. From 8:30 to probably 11:30, we were in his house talking the whole time. And I was like, oh my gosh. And there was, like I said, there were other people there, but it was me and him talking the whole time. So then he walked me out to my car. Well, it was freezing and my car was parked down the road because there was a bunch of people there. And so I was like, do you want me to drive you back up to your house since I got to circle around anyway? So he was like, sure. So he gets in my car.
Inner car love.
What is it? Well, that's in cars. And so we pulled back up to his house and I, pulled up to his front door because it was a cul-de-sac thingy. And so I pulled up to the front door, talked for a few minutes, and then he gets out and he was like, okay, love you, bye. And he shut the door. Well, he just went inside. And
he didn't come back out?
No. He just went inside. And I texted
That's my guy right there.
Because we weren't dating then. We hadn't even went on a first date that night.
Oh,
because this was on Tuesday. The Friday after that, on the 22nd, was when we were going on our first date. So this was the Tuesday. This was in the same week.
Hold on, if you could see my face, if you're not watching this by video, the fact she knows dates and days, that's like...
Okay, because Bible study is always on Tuesdays, and then I remember the date of our first date.
Dude, I can't even tell you when our first date...
And I actually just did remember the night...
No, I remember the first date. I remember our first date. It was Valentine's Day. Anyway, sorry.
But I'm saying you remember, though, the night, though, y'all started dating. But I just remember because, me and him had talked about things. And anyways, so I'm not getting into all that stuff. But so we weren't even... that was the first time I think I had, like, a full-on conversation with him, like, at all.
Yep.
And so... besides making jokes about his points or whatever.
Did you ask him if he was a student at that point?
Huh?
Did you ask him if he
No, I asked Abby the night at fall retreat, and she told me he wasn't a student. But anyways, the first 20 minutes of this podcast is just going to be all about John.
Respect, as it should be.
So anyways.
Give my king his flowers.
Yes. So I texted him, and I was like, I heard what you said. And I was like, ... And we just kind of laughed it off. Like,
he didn't own up to it?
No, he did. He did own up to it. I don't remember it exactly. I could go back and find the text, but that would be forever ago. But I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was just like, I think he was like, oops, it was a slip up, or sorry about that. Oh, no, a Freudian thought. I
don't even know what that is.
It's like a joke about like a subconscious thing or whatever. And
here's the deal though. Jonathan is way smarter than I think I ever will be. Like,
he's incredibly smart, and I feel so dumb around it.
Borderline, like, engineer. He's not in engineering, but he, like, the way his mind thinks, he's so analytical.
Smart.
Yeah, so analytical. And so...
And I'm so metaphorical, so sometimes we think so.
I didn't even know metaphorical was a word. I don't think it is.
Sure?
Metaphor.
Metaphor, and then... I'll say things in a metaphor stamp, as a metaphor, as a joke. And then I won't literally mean it, but
sarcasm?
No, sarcasm comes off rude sometimes. I don't know how to describe it. It'll have to be an in the moment sort of thing.
I'm going to look this up. Anyways, continue.
But... No, I think we had made a joke about him saying it was Freudian slip, and I'm driving home. And now, granted, he lives 45 minutes from my house, and so I'm driving home from Bible study.
Metaphorical is the word. Characteristics of or relating to a metaphor. Figurative.
Okay, so I'm not.
Figurative would be a better word.
I'm very much a figurative, I guess, talk sort of person, and he's very literal. So, but anyways, he's incredibly smart. But this whole podcast is not about to be Jonathan. He's going to go back, he's going to listen to this and be like...
I think he should, though. This is affirming everything that, he needs in life. We called him smart. You said he looks good.
Yeah, but he doesn't need the podcast. I already do that. I feel like...
Sometimes you need, an outward opinion.
You need outward affirmation.
Yeah. For the public to hear.
For the public to hear.
Sometimes
Jonathan, this is your outward affirmation.
Sometimes we like to praise people behind closed doors, which I think we should do, but sometimes you need to praise them out in public too. I think you need to do both, right? Because you can. I also think it sets the tone for your relationship though too, right? Because here's the deal. I praise Abby
We make jokes about my sister, but she knows it's all fake, and we love her.
But that's what I was gonna say. I praise her inside, where it's just us two. Mm-hmm. But also, I'll make jokes on the outside. But at the same time, I'll come behind and praise what she does. So I think it not validates, but it affirms the relationship. I also feel like if you can't make fun of one another, you're probably.
See, I'm not good with that though. So only because, okay, I feel like I'm probably once I get maybe I just need to get more confident because I will take everything seriously. Even growing up, my dad would make jokes and he'd be huh? I don't know.
That was last weekend with you.
Last weekend with me.
Your dad said something, and I thought you were going to shut down. That didn't happen actually, but you were about to. No, but see, again, I feel like that's the thing because we'll go on vacation and you and I have been around enough to I'll say something really stupid out of pocket and you're like, I don't feel like you take it serious because you know.
Well, yeah, I know it's a joke and stuff, but that's what I'm saying. Now I think if he were to make some jokes like that, now that we're months down the road, I would be like, oh, okay, ha, ha, ha. And I wouldn't think he's serious about it, but in the beginning, if he would have said
don't say.
I would have been
don't say that off the rip. You gotta earn those rights.
But no, even I'm still sensitive with stuff like that. Even if Mom or Abby and them make jokes or whatever, I'm just sensitive.
But it depends on how the joke is done.
That is very true.
I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I don't think it's necessarily as much of what you say as how you say it. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, what you say matters. But if I'm you're so dumb, and I'm joking, you're going to laugh about it. But if I'm you're literally an idiot. It's the same, the same word. Yeah. But it's the way I deliver the word that kind of sets the tone and precedence. And so a lot of people, Abby and I had this talk a couple of days ago too about getting in discussions or arguments or whatever. And I was like, we can say the same thing. And if we change our tone, it literally can either make the argument explode or it can diffuse it. Because of how we're saying it and the approach. And
I've learned that with him. Because I'll come, because he's used to handling things one way and our family's used to handling him in another. So I'll say something and then it's not been bad, but I'll say something and he'll be like, whoa, passive aggressive. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all in the
It's delivery. A humbling experience.
But that's, so the thing with the relationships is
that what today's topic is going to be, is relationships?
That's not what it was originally going to be about. Is that Jonathan?
Who is that?
Did somebody just walk in? What's up, Carson?
You going to come say?
No. Did you hit a bench max?
No, not bench.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I didn't know you guys were talking.
Yeah. You want to
okay.
join the podcast?
Come say hey.
Okay. All right. That was my brother that just walked in. Anyways, no, I think you got to find out how to. Well, you got to build a relationship with each person in your life, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, like, at the beginning when I met Jonathan, which was several years ago, like, him and I weren't boys like we are now, and so like I probably
because I would ask you questions about him, and you were like,
yeah.
Oh.
But now we've started hanging out like outside of just Wednesday night stuff, and like we'll go play airsoft and stuff, and so you can make jokes, like you can joke with each other now because we've invested the time into like having a friendship outside of it. And so I think that's kind of the key with any relationship, whether it's like a spouse or a dating relationship, or if it's like your friends, is how close you get to that person affects how you can approach them. And so Todd, for instance, is one of my best friends, and we now work together. And Todd and I kind of agreed to have this liberty of like, if we disagree with anything that the other's doing, like we have the freedom to say it. Because at the end of the day, we both want to be better. But him and I know how to handle those conflicting conversations. Like if something needs to be brought up, we can have that conversation and neither one of us feel attacked or feel like hurt. Whereas if somebody on the outside may approach us and they're like, hey, I don't really agree with what you're doing. Like that can cause problems. It can cause doubt because maybe they haven't spent that time like investing into a relationship with each other. And so not that their opinion may be invalid or whatever, but it may come across different because we don't have this like connection, you know? And so, I
think one thing too, honestly, like I said, it has been a humbling experience being in a relationship because I've never.
Well, you're different. You're both different.
We're both different, but like, what do you mean? Like different in what way?
Well, like each person brings something to the relationship. So you're different people, and we learned it getting married. But you're trying to figure out how to interact with each other. Like there's things that Abby does that probably frustrates me, but there's things I do that frustrates her, and you got to learn. You got to learn what you need to compromise on, what you need to work on, and then what just to kind of let slide. And also, like he grew up in you grew up in different families, and your families are a big portion of your upbringing, and so especially when you're close, like both of you guys are to your family, and so.
Well, that's what I was going to say is outside of my family, if I truly look back, I don't think I've ever really had close relationships, maybe like one. Yeah. But like it was never really, I guess, a healthy relationship per se. Yeah. But like friendship, but as far as like relationships, I've always, we made the joke about being sheltered, but like in all reality, I really was sheltered, and I don't even know if it was my parents as much as like also my choice, because I was such a deep fear of rejection from people that I sheltered myself from people. But I will say, like, one thing that this has showed me with him is like the depth of relationships. Like, because one thing that always got me is like, don't call me your friend, like. Don't just say that to say that. Yeah. Like, there's no relationship behind that statement. So don't say we're just friends if there's no actual, like, relationship behind that statement. And I think one thing it showed me with him is just, like, the depth of relationships in your life and how much it's like, wow, I really don't have super deep relationships in life. And it's not that that's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just saying, like, it just kind of, when you have a deep relationship with somebody, it shows you how some other relationships are so superficial. Yeah. And, which is always something I'm like, You had a really not weird, but you had a really totally different upbringing in high school.
Because you guys, were you alive when you guys were at your grandparents' church? So, yeah, you were. So you got to experience that on that side, and then you guys ended up switching churches. And I do think churches play a bigger portion in people's lives than they realize. And so you had this situation at this one church, and then you guys came here, and Abby flourished here. Abby did really well, but you didn't have as good of a time here. I think you really struggled.
I did up until, sorry, go ahead.
No, go, like, wasn't you?
Yeah, no, I did up until middle school, and then, but the whole reason from that was just because with Abby being 4 years older than me, and my parents being youth leaders, I was just always around them. I was always around them and their friends and the older people. And so when she kind of graduated and that whole friend group that I was always used to being around, I mean, for years, because we were here at Mount Olive for 10 years. So for all those years, I mean, 7 years or however many years or whatever, maybe it was 8 or 9, I don't remember. I was always used to being with them, not ever being with people my age. So then when that happened, so when it came to like the middle school, high school time, because I think we transitioned to Redemption whenever I was in freshman year, 8th grade. It was either 8th grade or freshman year.
Because when did you start school there?
Sophomore year. So I think it was maybe like 8th grade that I started at Redemption.
Okay.
Maybe even 7th grade. I don't remember. Maybe not 7th grade. But it may have been 7th to 8th grade that I started there. We went there for a few years. And then sophomore year is whenever I started to attend the school.
And, well, so the reason I say that is like, I feel like, you know, and I don't know exactly why you guys transitioned, but I know a big portion of talking to you and Abby was because you weren't in a place that you were getting connected. And not against anybody that was in any kind of role there during that time. It's just the way things played out. It's hard as a teenager to find your place. You know what I'm saying? And especially teenagers are really good at being cliquey, and they don't like change. I mean, I don't think a lot of us like change, but teenagers really find change hard, most of them, because it takes them out of their comfort zone. And teenage years are also like a really uncomfortable place anyway. So anytime you add fuel to that fire, it becomes even more difficult. And so,
well, and you got to think here too, all these kids my age had literally grown up together. And so instead of me growing up with them, I was with Abby and her older friends. And so, like I said, I was always the tag along sibling, and I had Ashlyn, who I was really close to. She was my best friend whenever we were here. But like still at the same time, I just never found my group. So that was purely what it was just that. And
also you lived 45 minutes away. So anytime anybody would do anything outside of like church stuff, because I think that's, and we may get into that. I don't think church should just be like a show up to service and kind of do your thing and then dip. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you didn't have the opportunity for that because Abby had her group, and I think at that point Abby could drive, right? Or was getting close to.
She could.
And so, you know, she was doing her own thing. Your parents were really plugged into, like, they were in a bicycling group and they were in all these other different groups. And so you were looking for your place in those people, those students, because they lived in Cleveland, like they'd hang out and they'd do stuff. And
they go to school together. Everyone's mom knows everyone. And like I said, there's no hate against them. It's just how it worked. But I will say, looking back now, because one thing is that everything under the sun has come to the surface. Like every fear, everything in dating Jonathan and stuff, every fear that I could have possibly had has come to the surface. I'm like, oh crap, because I didn't realize. Like, always seeing that, because I never fully was there with Abby's friend group, because I was a tag-along little sister. Like, I had fun with them.
Well, you'd always have that title.
But, I was a little sister. I wasn't the friend. And so then there was that. So I never felt that connection there. And then I never felt connection with people my age. And then, there were things at RTT that happened, never got the connection there. And so in my mind, it always translated as, like, there's never a place for me. So, like, and it was never anybody's fault necessarily. And I'm having to, like, reverse those thoughts about myself, and it's a daily battle, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm having to reverse the thoughts always of being like, like, oh wow, there actually are people who want to be like genuine friends with me, what? And but it makes a difference. But like you said though, church was a lot more than just showing up on a Sunday or a Wednesday night. It was about community, and it's about the body of Christ becoming a family. And I mean, that's the whole goal of Christianity, is we're all family. So it's like, if you can't be a part of the family, then it's obviously hard to find that.
And here's kind of the issue I was sitting down talking to a student a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about church, and just he had had a negative church experience, and we're talking about Jesus, and I love the message of Jesus, like I really truly do, because I look at Jesus and I get like emotional thinking about this, because we think of Jesus and he's like holy and he's pure. I mean, he's God in human form, and where do you think Jesus would be? Like, you would think he'd be at the church. He'd be at the place that we call holy, or we call anointed or whatever. But like Jesus was out in the streets, and he was meeting sinners.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest. He was meeting people who were in sin or who were dealing with stuff in their sin.
Yeah.
So he wasn't waiting until they were done, or they were like, hey, I'm done running away. I'm done doing this. He would go and find these people.
Yeah.
And he would have this encounter. And I can just imagine how loving he had to be in that, because people noticed something was different. The Bible tells us he actually, like, when he would teach, there was so much authority in his word that people took notice, because it wasn't like the stuff they were getting in synagogues and stuff. Because Jesus not only believed what he taught, but he lived it. And so I think sometimes we get so focused on in church, and I'm guilty of it too.
I mean, we all are.
We want people to come into church, and we think that's where they'll meet Jesus and they'll get saved. But like, think about the majority of people who attend church. They know who Jesus is. They know him. They may not know him on a personal level, or they may know him on like a Sunday, Wednesday level. But if you notice, Jesus was out there like throughout the weeks doing that. And so my point in that is the goal for the church, like as a whole, should be the ones who know Jesus should be going out into their place and reaching those people, because the reality of it is like, some people may never choose to set foot in a church. They may have a bad church experience. You had bad church experiences, for better or worse. And I remember when you had even talked about coming back, so you were in a really kind of messed up place.
We can talk about
and
that.
you were like, yeah, we'll get to where you've been, but you were kind of in this really like low place. You didn't know what was next and where to go. And I think sometimes we get so focused on we've got to please the people in the church that we forget the church's mission was to go lead people to Christ. Like, our whole goal should not be people's appraisal or approval or their praise, but it really should be that we honor and glorify Christ.
Yeah.
And I just see so many people, like, we get so content with, well, we had 70 show up. And I'm like, yeah, but how many people live in our cities? You know what I'm saying? And how many of them really may never get the opportunity to meet Jesus? Like, they really, because they're not going to step foot in a church. They don't feel like they're worthy enough to step foot in a church.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the body as a church should be able to go out and want to reach them. And I think when you have that personal conviction in a relationship with Christ, like, it makes you want to lead people to him because you know what he did for you. And so I feel like we're so focused on, well, let me get them into my church. And it's like, but Jesus met them outside of there. Yeah. He was really good at getting people who nobody else wanted to talk to. And we're really good at getting people who fit the right mold and dress appropriate and they walk in and they say the right words. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm nothing against those people, but we get uncomfortable when the people who don't know him, they come in and they don't act right. Yeah.
Well, I think we don't, something that I've noticed, and this is not like a harp on the church thing. This is just things, that we've kind of noticed is there's not a lot of discipleship that goes on. And that's what Jesus' whole thing was like, he would set people free from their sin and from these things, but also like the 12 disciples, he like took them under and he lived life with them and he taught them. And I think back to the whole relationship thing, like, I'm like, I guess I'm in a place where I'm like, I want that with people. Like, I'm okay. Because a few years ago, I was like, I want thousands to hear my name and hear my message and this and that and the other. And I'm still not saying that's a bad desire or anything. Like, if it's all for the glory of God and that's what God has intended, then go for that. But I also am like, I have understood the importance and the effect of relationship that has. And so when we see, I think if in churches, if we focused on, which is why love Pastor Josh. He used to be my youth pastor. I love their church and what they're doing, because you can see it's a family.
Yeah.
And that's what the church was supposed to be in the beginning, is we were supposed to be a family of people who come together. I mean, that's what the book of Acts was, is people were, coming together, selling their homes, selling everything. And
they were going to houses.
They were going to houses. And as they were going together, in those moments, they were coming together in unity and in love and as a family. But they were seeing signs, wonders, and miracles around them. And I think there's so much disunity in the body of Christ. That's why we don't see those things. I think that's why, because I'm like, if we came together and we were unified in just one thing, as silly as it sounds, if everyone came unified, like tonight, the students are going to have this, that, and the other, and deep in our hearts we were unified, I think we would see that.
But here, I'm going to fuel off of that. You and I had this conversation the other day. I texted you, I said, I don't know why this doesn't happen. And I thought about it a little bit more, though. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, it's because the people who are in your churches, like when we gather, most of the people in your churches are people who have been in church before.
For a long time.
Whether they've hopped churches or they're whatever, they've been in that church forever. Mm-hmm. They're people who are there. And the reality of it is not that those people don't have things going on in their lives. They do wholeheartedly. But, after a period of being in a church, you get really good at either just becoming another person or being a routine or regular, and you become routine. And I think that's the thing, is when we see them in Acts, like they're going out and they're finding people who are broken, who literally, they don't know how to play the church game or the church act. They don't know how to fake in their life, because this is the problem, is you get so good at coming to church that you can play the routine and your life can be messed up, and everybody anywhere has issues in their life. Yeah. I mean, I have issues in my life.
I got issues.
Everybody has
just ask
these
Jonathan.
Issues. But we like to act like everything's all good and everything's all okay, and praise the Lord. And we almost hide these things deep down. And if you notice in Acts, like they knew the needs of the people. Yeah. And not only because they were in relationship, but they're having conversation, but people were open and they were honest. And we're so afraid as society to be open and honest with one another, because people hurt us. Yeah. And they do. And we're so afraid to let people in. And then we wonder why God's not able to do something in our life, or why He doesn't. And it's because, inside, when we go to our homes, we're struggling and we're hurting. But when we go out in public, everything's all good, everything's all great. And we fail to realize, God's not going to take something from our life if we give Him half of it. I can go home and say, God, I'm struggling really bad right here. And He can meet me. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. He can meet you wherever. I found Jesus in a weight room. In a lifting room. Yeah. Found Him while I was about to hit a set of bench. That's when Jesus became real to me. But why would Jesus want to fix something in my life if I'm so broken at it at home, but the moment I get around people, it's all good. Yeah. It's all And
I'm bad. I will say I'm bad about that. And I think there's a difference between not letting something control you, because if you're struggling with something or whatever, and you don't have to let it control you. Yeah. So there are sides that you guys have seen in that, now Jonathan obviously in the picture, that y'all have seen of me that other people haven't seen. Yeah. But that doesn't make my smile around people any less fake. Yeah. But it's just there are times where I'm and I'm bad about this, where I just act like you're fine, act like you're fine, act like you're fine. Because, and I think our generation is big on this about authenticity. I think that's why we see so many people turned away from the church, because we grew up seeing, we saw hide it, we saw keep it behind the curtains, behind closed doors, and there are things we need to keep private. I'm not saying we have to expose every little thing. There are things that, God,
and there's things that you don't like.
You just use wisdom.
There are people that you don't need to go tell everything in your life.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, look at the story of Joseph.
But there's people also that genuinely care for you. And going back to you in church, I think now, so for those of you who don't know, Savannah serves on our student leadership team here. And genuinely, like, while we're on the podcast, I want you to know how proud I am of you and how grateful I am. Like in all seriousness, I told you years ago, like, you're one of the most gifted and talented people, one of the most anointed people I've ever met. And honestly, like, you're such a pure spirit. Like, I know we were joking about you being sheltered, but you really are a pure spirit, and that's special. And, you know, I think even to a degree, you have these leaders. I thought you were about to tear up, and I was like, okay.
I am.
I was like, I'll cry too. But you get in places of that in leadership too, and there's almost like this expectation that comes that you got to act perfect. Mm-hmm. And man, that bothers me so much, because it bothers me so I serve now as a student ministry pastor, and there's this expectation that comes that you've got to be perfect, and it's not necessarily from like your job requirement or whatever, but people want to see you live this perfect standard. And the reality of it is, man, like, don't follow me. Please don't follow me. Follow Jesus. Yeah. And God has blessed our team with so many great people and stuff, but if we're pulling them back into ourselves, I promise you I'll fail somebody at some point. Yeah. I probably do every day. I promise you'll fail somebody at some point.
I mean, we all will, because
and our message needs to be Jesus. Like, it needs to be unified, that we are all chasing after Christ, and we are all trying to be more like Him. Christian means to be Christ-like.
Yeah. And now that's not, and like, because and to interject on this, for someone who could be listening, is like, that's not an excuse to just like always be falling into sin. Yeah, that's not an excuse for that. And I know you didn't mean it like that, but I know there could be people who could interpret. That's not an excuse, because we don't need to abuse His grace and mercy.
No,
like,
not at all.
If you know, and if you know something's a sin, don't just like if this is the line for sin, don't just like inch towards it. Stay away from it.
Yeah, don't even hover near it.
Yeah, and there are things, and I'm not gonna lie, there are things that, like, you know, that I have realized that, you know, that the Lord will show me, and I'm like, oh crap, that's a sin. Yeah. But if it's a habit about something, it's hard to not like, okay, well, if I could just go this, and it's a hard thing and stuff, but that's where, like I said, I think authenticity is important, and part of me feels like a hypocrite, because I know that the past 6 months have been, I think I've probably written this in my journal, some of the most high highs, but also some of the most incredibly low lows. Yeah. Because, like, I have experienced things and feelings and love and care that and not even just Jonathan, from people here that I've not felt in years, if ever, actually. And besides from, like, my core 5 from you guys. But, like, and so, like, but with that has come also every fear, every thought, everything. I mean, I've probably had more like panic attacks or anxiety attacks the past 6 months than I've probably ever had, just because it's like every time there's been all these super amazing things, there's also been all these super big fears that have come with it. And I'm like daily having to be like, okay, Lord, like,
but
help me through this.
How many of those are expectations of people versus what Christ really expects out of us? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, we get really good trying to live up to these expectations of people. And the reality of it is, again, like, I'm not saying, you know, Jesus forgives us of our sins, and the Bible tells us to repent. But repent means not only to ask for forgiveness, but to turn away. And, you know, a lot of times when we see Christ interact with people who are in a life of sin, He forgives them of their sins, or He cleanses them, or He encourages them in their walk. But then He, more often than not, He's like, sin no more, or turn away. And so I say that to say, like, as people who serve in the church now in different capacities, like, you get these fears of, am I good enough? Like, do people think I'm good enough? And the reality of it is, again, like, our whole message should be on Jesus. And He is more than good enough.
Yeah, I mean, Paul was like, I boast in my weakness. I boast in that, because through that, you're able to see it's not my power. It's Christ's power and Christ's glory through me. And I think there's like this underlying pride in the church. And maybe that's not the right word. I don't know. And we all fall victim to it because we grew up in a church culture where you act like everything's perfect. You go into church, you may have been screaming in the car, but you're going to go in and you're going to act like everything's perfect. You're going to act like everything's fine. And heaven forbid, people know you just got your butt beat out in the parking lot, like whatever, screaming, fighting, whatever. And so we grew up in that of acting like everything's perfect. And because of that, it's almost like we've taken a pride in how perfect can our lives be. And like I said, I'm just as bad at this. I'm the pot calling the kettle black because I fight this as well. But
wholeheartedly,
we have to fight this urge to be like, no, like I am human. I do mess up. Now I don't have to let that identify me. A little back on identity, something the Lord's walking me through. But we don't have to like let that be the thing that identifies us. Like, okay, I struggle in this area. For me, one of my biggest struggles is anxiety. I always was like, I'm not an anxious person. I'm not. I have anxieties. I have fears and I have things like that I'm walking through. But I can't let that define me. Like, I have to let there be a difference between the two. But it's like we, as I think church and church culture and all this kind of stuff, there's like this pride that comes with like, oh, I'm this, that, and the other.
We get fixated on positions more than we do heart posture.
Mm-hmm.
And that bothers me a whole lot.
Posture over position.
Yeah. That'll preach. It just, I don't know, like, it's my favorite Bible character other than Jesus is, or people in the Bible, not even just character, but my favorite person in the Bible other than Jesus is Peter.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of myself in Peter.
Yeah.
Because Peter is, I'll tell you my biggest weakness, I can get angry really quick. I'm competitive and I can get frustrated very fast. Mm-hmm. And I've had to like step back from that and say, you know what, if I do it, that's a representation of Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, because if I wholeheartedly say I'm a follower of Christ, and I wholeheartedly, without even the position thing, like I'm saying as a follower of Jesus, not somebody who serves in a church, works in a church, whatever, somebody who follows Jesus, if I'm out on a basketball court and I'm saying the world's awful, the worst things that I can say to somebody, how does that further their walk with Jesus? It doesn't. And I've had to step back from that and realize, but more often than not, like Peter, so quick to act off emotion. I mean, so quick. Yeah. And we see him more than anybody I could see in the Bible. He challenges Jesus. Yeah. Like he'll question things, and you may be sitting here going, why would you challenge Jesus? That sounds dumb, but how many of us challenge Jesus? I'll be honest, there's times in my life I'm like, Jesus, I don't understand what you're trying to do. Yeah. No idea. Like, don't get it. and that's kind of where we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace, knowing we are human. Like, the Bible tells us that we cannot fully comprehend all of God's ways. Yeah. We are human. But
we also don't need to put him in a box.
Yeah, but that's also the other thing is we put God in this box where we put him in a four-walled box at church. Yeah. And, we feel like God can only meet you. This also has been bothering me lately. I don't know if this is the place to say it. I feel like sometimes
Say it. True Talk is a safe place.
I feel like sometimes we get so focused on, like, God can only meet you in the altar. And, like, I believe if your heart is convicted, like, and you really feel the presence of God, God can meet you wherever. Yeah. I mean, again, he met me. I grew up in church my whole life. I was 21 years old when I first found Jesus, like really, really found Jesus. Yeah. And I was in a weight room, lowest point of my life. And I found Jesus on a nasty mat that probably hadn't been washed in forever, and sweat stains all over it. And that's just where Jesus became so real to me. And, I feel like so often we think that we're not allowed to have those conversations with God. We're not allowed to ask the questions. We're not allowed to express the pain. We're not allowed to express the hurt. And it's something I told our students is I think sometimes when you act like you're perfect, it kind of negates the need for Jesus, right? Because the Bible, like Jesus came to help us or forgive us of our sins. But if you don't have sins, like you're good. If you're perfect at following all the laws and all the commandments, you're good. But none of us are. And we like to act like we are, but we're not. We all struggle with different things in our life, and we all should be wanting to grow and wanting to evolve. Yeah. And sometimes we get so complacent and like, oh, well, I attend church every Sunday. I'm there every Sunday, no fail. Okay, cool.
What do you get out of it? Or what are you actually thinking about doing in church?
Yeah, I've heard this one too. Like, I read my Bible every day, and I'm like, okay, but you can read something and get nothing out of it. If you're not in the place where your heart is after God, and we talked about it, it's more about the quality than it is the quantity. Yeah. I can be at home with my wife for 24 hours, and if we don't say a word, we're not growing any closer. Yeah. But it's the moment that we begin to talk and we begin to be in communication that, like, we can start growing, because I'm hearing her and she's hearing me. And so I don't.
So
no, you go ahead.
No, you finish your thought.
I don't know where I was going with that. So.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I did, but then I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, that's my fault.
No, you're good. You're good.
Well, what I was going to say, I liked what you had said about the topic, because I feel like also, which, granted, I've had all these experiences with the Lord and all these encounters because of the school and the church and all these things. Yeah. But I feel like I'm in a place where I am in like a secret place developing my relationship with the Lord. And like I will say, through that developing relationship, you have to have the hard conversations. Like, I don't care how in love you are with a person, lovey-dovey, romantic it looks. You have to have hard conversations. And I hate confrontation with a living passion.
I'm not one for conflict.
Yeah, I hate confrontation and conflict and all the things. And so I am just one that I would rather suffer in silence. But I've, coming to learn of just like, and Jonathan's gonna, if he listens to this, I think he will, he's gonna be like, girl, then talk to me, please, because I will just be silent and I will dwell on things because I'm like, I don't want to like make someone upset. And I've tended to do the same thing with God, where I will carry the burden myself. And like, I think it's because there were times with things in 2021 when all that stuff happened with our family, I had asked God questions and I was like, why? Why is this happening? I don't understand it. I was incredibly frustrated, but I was just like, you know what? No, like, this is wrong. I'm not going to be mad at God. I'm going to trust him and blah, blah, blah. And like, I think you can trust God and you can still ask him questions. Why is this happening? Why is this going on? Sure. And I think for me, because I didn't get necessarily answers that I wanted in that moment, or I didn't get answers that I felt like satisfied me from people or from whatever, it just kind of stopped me from asking questions. And then now I'm at the point to where I'm like, I can't carry the load anymore because I've tried to put the burden so much on myself. And I think we do that with God, was where we try to carry the burden so much on ourselves. We try to carry the load on ourselves.
Like God can't handle it.
Like God can't handle it. Because, and like in my mind, I want to please people and make everyone happy. I don't want to make anyone upset with me. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to, if I just deal with this, then the Lord's not going to have to worry about it. He's not going to be upset with me and all this stuff. It's such a screwed up mentality. I know it is 1,000,000%, but it's something that the Lord's having to change within me. And through that, our relationship is developing, because if someone comes and asks me, if a few years ago, if someone would have come and asked me things, I could have given you theologically probably the perfectly correct answer, the biblical thing. But deep down, I don't know if I would have like truly believed it. And I'm at a place now where, like, kind of like David in the sheep's field, or David being a shepherd out with the sheep and stuff, God developed him then. So when he did go to the palace and he did do these things, he was confident in his answers. He was confident in his stuff. And that's where me, like, I could give you all the perfectly theologically correct answers. I could give you all that stuff. But deep down, I don't know if I believed it, because it was like, well, this is just what I know. This is what I've been told. But deep down, I had questions and stuff stirring within me. And so it was just like, developing your relationship with God, it's not linear. No. And I think that's where we've screwed up, because we think it's got to look like this, it's got to be perfect, this is that. You read every book of the Bible, you do this. It's not. No relationship is the same. Your relationship with Abby is different than my relationship.
We also feel like it's just a straight up thing. Like there's not little breaks in it. And honestly, it should be straight up. But let's be real. It comes over and then it might go down a little bit and then it goes back up. And that's and I think you talked about it so perfectly. The generation, like our generation, is in a place that they need authenticity, and they need to know, if you say something, do you believe it wholeheartedly? Yeah. And
not from a fighting standpoint, but just like, if they want to see something real. Because we didn't see real growing up. We saw revival was a 3-day church service or a 2-week church service. I hate the term revival. And yeah, I know that's a whole different conversation. But it was these things, and like the thoughts and ideas behind it are great. Like being on fire for the Lord.
Hopefully
and all this
pure.
Stuff. Yes, pure. But like,
hopefully.
Yeah. Yes, hopefully. But we grew up seeing all of these things of, okay, church, we're going to have a 3-day revival. So-and-so is going to come in and preach a word from the Lord. And if it's pure and it's genuine and it's what the Lord wants, that's the best thing. That's literally the best thing. But it's all about, are we putting this on ourselves because we want to force the Lord to do something, or are we living in surrender to let him do what he wants to do through us? And like, I just, yeah.
So you mentioned like you could give a perfect theological answer. I addressed earlier, Jesus, one of my favorite passages of scripture said Jesus taught with real authority, unlike the religious leaders or the synagogue. And what I got from that is like that man believed it wholeheartedly. He knew it wholeheartedly. More than that, he lived it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And I think so often, not even a shot at anybody, but we can get really good at preaching things that sound good, and they're good on Instagram. They're quotable, whatever.
They make the perfect reels.
Yeah, they're great.
And that's coming from someone who I love social media, all that kind of stuff.
And no shot at those people.
Yeah,
Genuinely.
No.
I've done it. I've got up there and I've said things and it sounded good, but I knew in my heart, like I was struggling with that at that moment. And I guess where God's taking me in my relationship is I'm tired of things that sound good. I want things that are real, that help people like actually grow and develop. Because again, we all want our relationship to be straight. Like we want it to go up. But there's some times that there's some divots and there's some dips, and there's times that hurt happens. People hurt us. The church hurts us.
Yeah.
People in the church hurt us. Yeah. And we let those things kind of flare up, and it affects our relationship. And so we see with Jesus, he taught with real authority. Like he believed everything he said. He didn't just give the like picture perfect answer. He was like, he gave things that people could actually live by. Yeah. And that's where the beauty of Jesus comes in, because not only did he give them, but he's got the grace for when we mess up, if we mess up. Again, we shouldn't want to mess up. I don't want to mess up.
And we don't have to. We don't have to fall into sin.
No.
But saying that, if you do, there is grace. And there's grace and mercy. And that's a hard thing for me to comprehend, because I'd be like, I messed up, like I deserve punishment, go ahead, Lord, cuff me, take me now, like, all these things. But you have to, there is grace for you, but just don't push his grace, don't push his limits.
Don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, don't take advantage of it and stuff. And now he understands, and this is like, it's such a like fine line, because it's like, if they're genuinely struggling, Jesus wants to walk with you through it. He wants to bring you freedom. Sometimes it's an instant thing just like that, and I believe he can do that with anything and anybody. But also, I think there are times where we can be, where he prunes us through the process of things, because, it strengthens us. You don't gain muscle overnight. I mean, you like to work out. I used to, but I barely anymore. But, you don't just gain muscle overnight. It is a process, and it's just like with anything. I mean, literally, if you look at everything God has given us in life, like if you look at, if you look at the ground around us, you look at gardens, you look at food, you look at anything, almost anything that came instant is somehow probably not good for you and stuff. Now, let me say, I will stress and clarify, supernaturally, God can. And I think that's probably where Jesus stood out, because he did have supernatural signs and miracles that followed him. But I think we live in such an instant culture. We want things now that we've avoided the process. But I've been learning through these last 6 months, no, the process, it might feel like it's going to break you, but it's just so he can build you back to be something he wants you to be and stuff. And that's honestly where I feel like we try to avoid that, but don't avoid the process. And with life, there's not necessarily an end goal, because he's infinite. Like he is forever. We will forever be if we accept him and we live our life for him in glory, we will forever be seeing new sides of him, new things about him, all these stuff. We will forever be encountering different things about him, which is crazy to think about. I mean, you think about the angels with the hundreds of eyes all over their body, and each eye with each angle see something new about him. There's so many things. So it's not like we're ever going to reach that point of being like, oh, all right, well, I've made it to the Christian.
That's how I want to be, really.
There's never going to be like, okay, I'm right at the perfect thing. It's like, no, just when you think you've hit it, God's going to pull you to go a little bit farther, and then a little bit farther, and a little bit farther. And, we have to give ourselves grace and just understand life is a process. Everything is a process. And I'm like I said, I'm preaching to myself here, because I want it, we all want it overnight. We want it to be an instant thing, and God's like, but I want to teach you something in the process. So, hey friends, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode that I got to do with my brother-in-law. And I just want to remind you guys, or let you guys know that this podcast is actually going to be split up into 2 parts. So this is part 1, and part 2, we are going to be diving into some deeper topics and some deeper subjects. And just have a really nice conversation. And so I hope you guys got something from this episode. If anything, I hope you guys have enjoyed getting all the tea on my love life and everything at the moment. But most of all, I hope you guys left feeling encouraged. And yeah, as I say every week, there's no better person to be than who God created you to be. So go out, be that person, be it confidently. Know that I love you, but Jesus loves you even more. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and be back ready to tune in next week and listen to the second half of the True Talk podcast featuring Tuck. And so, yeah, tune in next week, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye, friends.